Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm going to narrate 8 true Appalachian Mountains disturbing and creepy stories. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and share this with your friends. Also, let me know from where you're watching. Thanks. Now let's start. I'm 32, work maintenance for a school district near Elms Hollow, right where the Appalachians start thickening into real country. Grew up around these woods. My dad taught me how to track, my mom taught me how not to get lost, and Cody, my best friend since 5th grade, taught me how to laugh off every weird thing that went bump in the night. We'd been doing weekend hikes for years, nothing crazy, just trails we knew, overnight gear, sometimes a little whiskey in a flask. Last fall, Cody pulled out this old map he found in his granddad's shed. Looked homemade, worn soft like it had been folded 1,000 times. There was a ridge marked with a thick line of pencil, keep away, no good. I asked him if he was serious about it. He shrugged and said, only one way to find out. So we went. It was a quick hike, 3, maybe 4 miles off trail. Took longer than expected because the terrain wasn't great, but we made it just before dark. The ridge wasn't high, but it felt off. I know that sounds vague, but that's how it was. The air felt heavier. And Cody noticed it too because he stopped cracking jokes. He just looked around a lot, like he was waiting for something to jump out. We set up camp anyway. Fire didn't take like usual, even though the wood wasn't wet. We had to huddle close just to get any warmth. I remember thinking everything felt too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but hollow, like a soundproof room. That kind of quiet. Around midnight, I heard movement. Big steps, slow and careful. Not stomping, but not sneaky either. I froze. Cody sat up without a word and grabbed his knife. I had my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't want to know what was out there just yet. The steps stopped just beyond the light's edge. Then came the breathing. It didn't sound like a bear. I've heard bears. This was messy. Too fast, like it was struggling to remember how to do it. The rhythm was all wrong, like a dog trying to mimic a person's breathing. Cody stood up. I saw his silhouette shift, shoulders squared, blade in hand. Then it rushed us. All I saw was motion, a shape that didn't move right, blurry, like it was both there and not. Cody yelled and charged it. I swear he didn't even hesitate, just ran at it, slashing. There was a scream, nothing human, way too high-pitched. My ears went fuzzy. The thing recoiled and vanished into the trees. Cody stumbled back, hit the ground hard. His chest was ripped up bad, shirt shredded, skin torn. I grabbed the first aid kit, hands shaking. Did what I could, wrapped him up, and prayed nothing was broken inside. We left before sunrise. I carried most of his weight, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. We didn't stop until we hit the road. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital. They said a bear or mountain lion, but the scratches were deep and uneven, not like claws, more like tools or fingers. Cody didn't argue, just nodded at whatever they told him. He moved to Colorado 2 months later, took a job fixing HVAC systems, says the dry air suits him. Me? I still hike. I stick to marked trails now. I don't go near that ridge. Don't need to prove anything anymore. If you're enjoying these stories so far, I have a quick request. If you've ever experienced something similar, I genuinely love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments, and if you have a story idea you'd like me to cover next, feel free to share that too. If you haven't already, a like and subscribe would mean a lot, and also you can share this with your friends. Love you all. My name is Darren, and this happened back in the fall of 2019. I was burned out, completely. Couldn't think, couldn't sleep, couldn't even sit still without my skin crawling. So I took some time off work. A buddy of mine, Reese, knew a guy who apparently had a cabin in the mountains near a little town called Harper's Bend. Said it was his uncle's place, barely used anymore but stocked and ready if I needed quiet. Reese vouched for it, and honestly, I was desperate. I said yes, without asking much. I drove up alone, 4 hours out, no traffic. I pulled up to the cabin around 4 p.m. It looked fine. A bit old, sure, but sturdy. Wood exterior, narrow chimney, surrounded by thick forest on every side. Not much of a yard, just trees right up to the porch. No signal on my phone, but that was part of the appeal. I needed to unplug. A guy was already waiting there. Introduced himself as Micah. Said he was the caretaker. Mid-40s maybe? Real thin, long dark hair, kind of papery skin, like he's been through a few too many sunburns. Something about him was off. He smiled a lot, but it was wrong. The kind of smile that doesn't touch the eyes. You'll have the place to yourself. He said, I live nearby. Just holler if you need anything. I thanked him, and before I could ask anything else, he turned and walked off into the woods. No car, no path, just gone. The first night, I actually slept pretty well. The silence was heavy, but in a good way. No cars, no neighbors, no buzzing phone. I lit the fireplace, read for a bit, had a couple bourbons and knocked out early. Second night, I heard the knocking. 3 soft taps. Just after 10, came from the window near the kitchen sink. I paused, waited, thought maybe I imagined it, but it had been real. 3 knocks, deliberate. I went over and looked outside with a flashlight. Nothing. Just trees and dark. Could have been a branch, maybe even a squirrel. Third night, same thing, but this time the sound came from a different window. Same pattern, 3 knocks, then silence. I didn't go look right away. I stood in the middle of the cabin holding the flashlight, breathing too loud, telling myself it was nothing. I finally checked, and again, no one, just forest, still as ever. Later that same night, I saw Micah, standing just inside the tree line, far enough that I couldn't make out his face, but close enough that I knew it was him. No light, no movement, just standing there, facing the cabin. I stepped outside and called his name. He didn't answer, he didn't move. Then, like someone hitting rewind, he backed up into the trees until I couldn't see him anymore. I barely slept that night. By morning, I was done. I packed my bag before breakfast and decided I'd hike out. I'd figure out a ride later. I opened the door to leave, and Michael was standing right there. Not moving, just inches from the door. You said you were leaving tomorrow, he said. His voice wasn't right. Like someone trying to imitate a voice they'd only ever heard through a wall. Too smooth in the wrong places, like it was stitched together. I changed my mind, I said. I kept my tone even. My heart was doing its best to break out of my ribs. Didn't sleep well. He smiled, wide, too wide. No teeth, just this dark, wet-looking space where his mouth should have been. There's nothing out there for you, he said. Then he turned and walked off around the cabin. I slammed the door and locked it. I tried calling Reese. Straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Nothing. I sat there for maybe an hour, just pacing, talking to myself, telling myself it was just some weird caretaker who took his job too seriously. And then I heard it from the back room, my voice calling my name. I didn't even pause. I grabbed my stuff and ran. Out the front door, down the hill, into the woods. No trail, just going downhill because I figured the road had to be that way. I kept moving until my legs gave out and I fell face first into some gravel. Turns out I was a few hundred yards from a ranger station. I told him I'd gotten lost hiking, didn't say anything else. Back home, I asked Reese what the hell kind of setup that was. He looked at me like I was making it up. What cabin? He said, the one near Harper's Bend. You said your friend's uncle? I don't have any friends with property out there, he said. I've never even heard of Harper's Bend. I don't know where I stayed. I don't know who or what Micah really was. But I know this, he wasn't human. And I don't think that cabin belongs to anyone at all. My name's Mark. I don't usually start with that, but for this, I think it matters. You don't tell stories like this unless you're willing to put your name behind them. This happened about 5 years ago. I was 23, just out of college, and pretty full of myself. Thought I had a grip on life. I didn't. I'd majored in environmental science, and between classes and jobs, I spent most of my free time hiking. I'd been hitting trails since I was a teenager, nothing extreme, just long, quiet walks in places most people didn't bother to explore. It felt honest, simple, like the world made more sense out there than it ever did in a classroom. I was still living near Laurel Hollow, this little town tucked into the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains. You'd miss it if you blinked driving through, but the land around it? It's some of the oldest, weirdest terrain in the country. There's a stillness in those woods that feels older than people. Some locals don't talk about it. Others talk too much. That summer, I got the idea to try a trail I'd never done before. I found it in one of those backcountry forums, the kind with black backgrounds and neon green text, where old-school hikers swap weird finds. The trail didn't have a name, just a number, FR 1082. It wasn't on official maps, but a few posts mentioned it, deep in the Pisgah. One night out and back, quiet, isolated, perfect. Except one of the last posts on the thread said something strange. Incredible views, it read, but don't go past the second cairn, no seriously. No explanation, no follow-up. The user who posted it hadn't logged on in years. You'd think that would have stopped me, but I was 23, remember, invincible. So I packed light, made sure my phone and charger were full, grabbed my compass, and headed out just after sunrise. The beginning was everything I'd hoped for. No one else on the trail, just dirt under my boots, leaves overhead, and a kind of quiet that made your head feel clear for the first time in weeks. I passed the first cairn about an hour in, a neat little stack of smooth stones by a bend in the path. I paused, took a quick photo, and kept going. The second cairn didn't stand out right away. I almost walked right past it. It was half collapsed, barely taller than my knee, and so covered in moss that it just looked like a lump of rock. I'd gone maybe 20 feet beyond it before something in my gut told me to stop. I turned around to look at it. That's when I noticed how quiet everything had gotten. No wind, no bird calls, not even the buzz of insects. Just nothing. A silence so thick it made my ears feel plugged, like I'd gone underwater. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just altitude or fatigue, but I pulled out my phone anyway, wanted to double-check my location. That's when the GPS went haywire. The map wouldn't load. My location marker spun slowly in circles, then froze. The trail line disappeared. I tried the compass app, but it flickered between directions like it couldn't make up its mind. So I reached for my analog compass, the one clipped to my belt. It was worse. The needle jittered. Not just a little. It shook like it was being pulled in every direction at once, like it wanted to snap right through the glass. I stopped cold, turned around expecting to backtrack, but there was no trail behind me, just trees, thick, identical, like the forest had closed behind me while I wasn't looking. My boot prints? Gone. Even the cairn had vanished from view. I walked back a few feet. Nothing looked familiar. A slow, crawling pressure started building in my chest. Not full panic yet, just this creeping sense that something was off in a way I couldn't explain. I picked a direction and started walking. Tried to stay calm, counted my steps, marked trees with broken twigs as I passed. That's when the trees started to change. They were too smooth. No bark, no cracks or knots. Just solid, grayish trunks that looked fake, or worse, like skin. I touched one. It was warm. I pulled my hand back like it had burned me. And then I heard it. A whistle. 2 notes. Soft. Almost playful. I froze. It came again. From up ahead. Sang 2 notes. It didn't sound threatening. If anything, it sounded inviting. Like someone calling for a dog. Like whoever it was expected me to follow. And I did. I wish I could say I thought it was a ranger or another hiker, but I didn't think. I just moved. Like I'd been waiting for it. Like it had already made the decision for me. That's when I saw her, standing maybe 30 feet away, barefoot, facing away from me. Her hair was long, black, and soaking wet, like she'd just come out of a lake. It clung to her back in thick ropes. She didn't move, didn't make a sound. Then she whistled again, Same two notes. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My mouth had gone dry. My arms felt heavy. Then she turned slowly and walked into the woods, disappearing behind a cluster of thin, black trees. I followed. I couldn't tell you how long we walked. The sun never moved, the light never changed. It was like time had been switched off. The ground got soft, almost mushy. Every step made a quiet, sucking noise, like the earth was trying to keep me. Eventually, I passed under a low arch made of stone, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. After that, everything got colder. I could see my breath. My fingers went numb. My lips started to crack. And then I saw it, that cabin. It looked wrong, like it had grown there instead of being built. The boards were dark and twisted, the windows opaque with some kind of waxy coating. The door frame was carved all over, runes, symbols, maybe letters, but I didn't understand any of it. I didn't knock. I just opened the door and stepped inside. Complete blackness. My flashlight flickered once, then died. My phone wouldn't turn on. The door slammed shut behind me, and I was swallowed in it. I shouted, slammed my fist on the door. No sound came back. Then something moved. Inside my head, a voice. Female, calm, but wrong. Like it was using my thoughts as a speaker. It didn't say words. It showed them. Feelings, images, memories that weren't mine. I saw the forest breathing. I saw wounds in the ground pulsing with light. I saw gods buried under stone. I saw myself walking into this place again and again. Different clothes, different times, always returning, always forgetting. Then, nothing. I woke up, lying face down in the mud. My lips were torn, my throat ached, my boots were gone, my backpack gone, my compass shattered, my phone dead. I'd lost nearly 30 pounds, and it was 3 days later I found my car. No tickets, no ranger notes, no one had come looking. I drove home. Didn't talk to anyone for 2 weeks. But here's the part that keeps me up. I didn't come back alone. My name's Alex. That's probably the least important part of this story, but it's how I remember. I was still me when all this started. I was 20 when I decided to hike part of the Appalachian Trail alone. Not the whole thing, just a few days through a section in western North Carolina. I wasn't trying to find enlightenment or whatever. I just needed quiet. Everything back home was falling apart. School felt like a treadmill going nowhere. And my last relationship had ended with a spectacular blend of shouting and ghosting. I didn't even feel like a person anymore, just someone going through motion. So I packed my bag, bought a bus ticket to this little trail town called Ravenford, and told my parents I'd check in once I made it to the next stop. Then I shut off my phone and walked into the woods like I was stepping out of the world for a while. The first couple of days were perfect. Quiet, peaceful. It was just me and the trail, the occasional chirp of birds, and the creaking of trees overhead. I'd set up camp off the main path, boil cheap meals, write in a little notebook I brought, and actually feel like I was starting to come back to life. I even started sleeping through the night, which hadn't happened in months. Then came day 3. I'd made camp near a small creek. Good spot, easy water access, mostly level ground. I was finishing dinner, just some instant rice with a pouch of tuna stirred in, when I heard someone approaching. Footsteps, slow and even, crunching pine needles like they didn't care who heard them. That part didn't bother me. Hikers pass by sometimes. But something about this one felt off. He came out of the trees like he'd always been there. Tall, thin, maybe mid-30s. Beard so red it looked sunburned. His clothes were a mix of faded camo and ragged jeans, and his boots were coming apart at the soles. He had a long knife strapped to his side in a duct-taped sheath that looked like it had been made from an old belt and plastic. He smiled like we'd met before. Evenin'. I nodded. Hey, tried to sound normal. I didn't move much, but I did slide one hand a little closer to my multi-tool. You camping solo? he asked, eyes casually scanning the area like he already knew the answer. I lied, told him a friend was camped just up the ridge, checking out another site. He didn't react right away, just gave a slow nod like he was mulling something over. Mind if I pitch nearby? Won't bother you. It felt like a trap, honestly. I didn't want to say yes, but saying no didn't feel like an option. There was a weight in the way he looked at me, like he was testing me. Sure, I said. It's public land. He dropped a rolled-up blanket, no pack, no gear beyond a canteen and the knife, and started laying out a tarp. That was the first thing that really pinged my gut. Who goes hiking without any food? Or a sleeping bag? That night, I didn't sleep much. I crawled into my tent early and zipped it shut like that would help. Outside, he sat by the fire without saying another word, just watching the embers die out and muttering softly to himself now and then. Not words I could understand, just a rhythm, low and steady. At some point, he lay down, but I could still hear his breathing. Long, slow breaths, not the kind you hear when someone's asleep. Just consistent, controlled. I must have dozed off in bits, but I jolted awake every time a twig cracked or the wind rustled. By dawn, I was up and packed. He was already awake, squatting by the creek, staring into it like he was reading it. "You moving on?" he asked without looking at me. "Yeah," I said, trying to get in some miles. "You sure you don't want company?" I forced a chuckle. I usually hike better alone. He stood and turned toward me, smiling thinner this time. "Lot of folks go missing in these woods." I didn't say anything, I just walked, fast. That whole day, I was half hiking, half running. I barely drank water. My knees were aching by the afternoon, but I didn't stop. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I imagined him stepping out from behind a tree, but he never did. That night, I didn't build a fire, ate a protein bar cold, and climbed into my tent without even setting up my little cook pot. I lay there gripping my flashlight and knife like a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up to this awful, sweet smell. I knew something was wrong before I even unzipped the tent. Right outside the flap was a squirrel. Dead. Its belly had been split open clean, all the organs gone. Eyes still wide like it had been caught mid-scream. It was laid out intentionally, neatly, its little arms and legs stretched like someone had posed it. I almost threw up. I checked all around the camp but saw nothing. No footprints, no sign of anyone. But I knew. I buried it under a pile of rocks and left. Fast. I didn't stop for anything. Not water, not food, nothing. I just kept walking. My legs were jelly by mid-afternoon. I had no idea how many miles I covered, but it felt like too many. That night I came across one of those old wooden lean-tos. 3 walls and a roof with old names carved into every inch of the inside. I debated pushing on, but I was done. My legs were shot and it was almost dark. I unrolled my bag inside, ate what was left of my rations, and kept my knife within arm's reach. I think I dozed off, just barely. Then the forest went silent. No bugs, no rustling, just dead quiet. That woke me all the way up. I sat still, listening. Then the footsteps came, soft at first, then crunching closer. A stick snapped. Then this dragging sound, something heavy sliding through leaves. And then his voice, "Thought I might catch up with ya." I grabbed my knife and flashlight, heart in my throat. He stepped into the clearing, all calm, like this was normal. Same clothes, same knife. His smile was different, though. Forced, maybe. Sharper. "You sleeping yet?" he asked, like it was a joke. I didn't answer. I just stood up, putting my back against the shelter wall. "You left awful quick," he said. Didn't even say goodbye. He didn't come closer. Just stood at the edge of the lean-to in the moonlight, swinging that knife at his side. "Some folks," he muttered, "don't know how to be grateful." Then he turned and walked back into the woods. No big finale, no charge, just walked away, like it had all been for nothing. I didn't sleep, just sat there gripping the knife until the sun started creeping through the trees. He was gone, but behind me, scratched into the wood with something sharp, were the words, "Still watching you." I ran. Didn't stop to eat, didn't stop to rest. I hit the first road I found and flagged down a truck driver. He took one look at me and said I looked like hell. I told him I'd had a rough night. I'd never told anyone else. Not my parents, not the cops, not the trail office. What would I even say? I never went back. I work in trail restoration. It's not glamorous, and it's definitely not what I imagined doing when I was a kid, but I've grown to appreciate it. I get paid to be alone in the woods, fixing up forgotten trails and abandoned ranger posts. Most days, it's peaceful. Just me, the tools on my back, and the dirt under my boots. I'm used to working solo. In fact, I prefer it. I grew up in a house where the TV was always on, doors slammed constantly, and someone was always yelling across the hall. Out here, I can hear myself think. It's one of the few places I actually feel normal. Last October, I got a contract near the Tennessee-Kentucky border. They wanted me to inspect and start prepping an old ranger outpost for restoration. According to the brief, the cabin had been unused for over 10 years and sat about 5 miles off the nearest fire road. No power, no plumbing, no trail access. It wasn't even on most updated maps. I said yes without blinking. The more remote, the better. The road was washed out, so they had to fly me in by helicopter. That should have been my first hint that this wasn't a normal job. As the chopper lifted off and vanished over the canopy, I felt this weird drop in my chest, like someone had just pulled a rug out from under me, and I was waiting to hit the floor. The cabin looked like it had been dragged out of a horror movie set. The roof sagged like it was exhaling its last breath, moss draped over the walls like a bad wig, and one of the windows was held together by a slap of duct tape and hope. But structurally, it wasn't as bad as it looked. I could work with it. I spent the first 2 days clearing out debris, patching the worst holes, and organizing the supplies from the drop. I found some old ranger logs in a dusty cabinet, entries from the 90s, mostly weather notes and wildlife sightings. Nothing weird, nothing useful either. But on the third night, I started hearing the ticking. It sounded like someone tapping lightly on wood with metal. Tick, tick, tick. Always 3, always slow. Too slow to be a woodpecker and too deliberate. It came from the tree line, just far enough that my headlamp couldn't reach it. When I pointed my light toward it, silence. Turned away, tick, tick, tick again. That's when I started sleeping with my multi-tool under my pillow. Not that it would have helped. Next morning, I opened the cabin door and found 3 small stones stacked on the threshold. Perfectly balanced, smooth and pale like river rock. I stared at them for maybe a full minute before kicking them over. Thought it might have been erosion or an animal. That's what I told myself anyway. Later that afternoon, I hiked up the ridge to try and get a signal. The sat phone only worked if I held it in the exact right spot, arm extended over the edge of a bluff, standing on one leg like a goddamn scarecrow. I managed to send out my coordinates and a quick check-in to base. It took 5 minutes just to send 1 bar of text. On the way back, I noticed a trail I hadn't seen before. It wasn't overgrown, it was too clear, like someone had brushed the leaves aside recently. There weren't any markers, no blazes, no signs of old use. I should have ignored it, but something about the way it curved into the trees made me follow it. Maybe half a mile in, I came across this clearing. In the center stood a tree, burnt to a crisp, black as coal, still standing. Like lightning had struck it years ago and it just never bothered to fall. Around it were stone stacks, dozens of them, arranged in spirals and arcs. Some had feathers sticking out. Others had what looked like red finger smears across the surfaces. I couldn't tell if it was blood or clay or something else. The formations didn't make sense, but they weren't random either. Then I heard it, tick, 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 closer now. I spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing, but I swear I saw the bark on that blackened tree shimmer, just for a second, like heat rising off pavement or something slipping behind it. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked as fast as I could without breaking into a full run. When I got back to the cabin, I bolted the door and dragged a shelving unit in front of it. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, watching the ceiling, listening. At some point, the whispering started. It didn't sound like words at first, more like someone mumbling just out of earshot. But then it began repeating a phrase, low and rhythmic. Leave him, leave him, leave him. I didn't move. Just stared at the window and gripped my multi-tool like it was a crucifix. Next morning, I opened the door. The stones were back, stacked on the door handle this time, balanced with surgical precision. On top was a rabbit's skull. No fur, no blood. The back of the skull was hollowed out cleanly, like someone had scooped the brain with a spoon. No predator did that. That's when I stopped pretending this was anything close to normal. I climbed back to the ridge and tried sending an emergency signal. Sat phone glitched out. Signal wouldn't hold. Message wouldn't send. It beeped a low battery warning, then blinked out completely. 1 bar left. No time to try again. I ran back. No trail. I just followed a dry creek bed downhill, hoping it would lead somewhere, anywhere. But the terrain was steep and I slipped more than once, twisted my ankle. Kept going. I made it back to the cabin before dark and didn't turn the lights on. I sat in silence, holding my breath every time a board creaked. Around 2 in the morning, I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing. It was tall, lanky. Its arms hung too low. Its head looked like a hollow tree stump. It swayed slowly from side to side, like it was listening to something only it could hear. I stared for maybe 5 seconds before it moved. Not forward, just closer. 1 second it was at the tree line, the next it was 20 feet nearer. I didn't see it move, I just blinked and it was there. Then it made the sound, tick, 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 not out loud, inside me. I felt it behind my sternum like something cracking gently against my ribs. I curled into a ball on the floor and squeezed my eyes shut until the sound stopped. At sunrise, I opened the door, hoping it was all just in my head. On the inside of the window, smeared in something dark, were the words, "He's still here." That was the end of it for me. I packed everything I could grab and bolted. I didn't care where the real trail was. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs turned to jelly. I followed the creek bed down the ridge and through God knows how many switchbacks until I saw the ranger station. When they found me, I looked like hell, covered in scratches, caked in mud. My lips cracked from dehydration. They didn't believe a word I said. According to them, the cabin I was assigned to had been decommissioned for 15 years. No current work orders, no official drops. But I had the key, the logbook, the confirmation emails, my report. They called it isolation stress, gave me medical leave, told me to get some rest. I still work outdoors, still love the woods, but I never go alone anymore. I was 21 when this happened. I'm not the superstitious type, never was. But after that weekend in the mountains, I stopped pretending that everything can be explained. There are places out there that don't want to be found. Places that remember you. This all started when midterms hit. I was barely sleeping, living off vending machine coffee and caffeine pills. Griff, my roommate, could tell I was running on fumes. One night, after I nearly face-planted into my textbook, he tossed me a bag of trail mix and said, "You need a reset, man, a full disconnect." I didn't argue. His cousin Bree had a friend who owned a cabin out near Black Hollow. Deep woods, no cell towers, no neighbors. Bree vouched for it. It was rustic, quiet, off-grid. Sounded like heaven after a week of library lights and essay deadline. So we planned a quick overnight trip. Me, Griff, Bree, Marcos, JD, we still called him Lenny then, and Hannah. 6 of us, 1 Jeep, way too many bags for one night. We left Friday afternoon, blasting music, talking over each other, half the snacks gone before we even hit the hills. Griff's GPS died an hour before we got there, and we had to rely on a screenshot Bree had taken of a map. The last stretch of road was brutal. Dirt path, maybe 1 lane wide, hugging the side of a steep drop. The trees got denser the higher we went. No road signs, no houses, just forest. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun had already ducked behind the ridge. The place looked like it had been standing there for 50 years and might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. It was this weathered A-frame, half swallowed by moss and vines. There was one way in, a clearing just big enough for the Jeep to turn around, and nothing but trees beyond that. Still, we were pumped. Bree was already unpacking beers, Griff found firewood behind the shed. We all fell into our usual roles. Marcos got the Bluetooth speaker working, barely. JD claimed the biggest room, and Hannah took over the fire pit like she'd been born in flannel. It actually felt like a good call. We cooked hot dogs on sticks, burned half the marshmallows, shared dumb stories from freshman year. For a while, it was perfect. Until it wasn't. Around 10, I started feeling off. Not scared exactly, just uneasy. Like I was on a stage and someone I couldn't see was sitting in the back row, staring. It wasn't the kind of fear you can talk yourself out of. It settled in your gut. I tried brushing it off, sipped my beer, looked at the stars. Then I saw it. Something in the trees. Just past the firelight where the woods started to turn pitch black. A figure, standing still, upright, watching. I nudged Griff. "You see that?" He squinted. Probably just a deer, but it didn't feel like a deer. Deer move. This thing didn't. It just stood there, half-shadowed, like it was waiting for a cue. Hannah must have noticed us staring. She stood up and called out, "Bree, that you?" Bree had gone inside a few minutes earlier to grab more blankets. No answer. Then the shape raised its arm and waved. Something about the motion was wrong. Too slow, too calculated, like it was copying the idea of a wave but hadn't practiced it enough. Then Bree stepped out onto the porch dragging a quilt. "What are you yelling about?" she asked. We turned back to the trees. The figure was gone. Griff's hand tightened around his beer. "You saw that too, right?" "Yeah," I said quietly. It waved at us. We killed the fire after that, locked the doors, checked the windows even though most didn't close all the way. The cabin popped and creaked like it was settling into its own grave. Griff pulled an old hunting rifle off the wall. Bree said it hadn't been fired in years, but we found some dusty shells in the drawer next to old board games and expired bug spray. Marcos and I checked the back window that faced the shed. That's when Marcos froze. "There's someone by the shed." We all rushed to the kitchen window. Standing just to the left of the tool shed was a figure. Hoodie, jeans, same build as Hannah. But it wasn't her. Its head was tilted unnaturally to the side, mouth hanging open, arms limp but twitching slightly like it didn't know what to do with them. One hand scraped across the side of the shed, fingers bent in impossible angles. And then it screamed. The sound didn't come from outside. It came from under us, like the house itself was screaming, boards vibrating, nails groaning, something deep and wet and angry pushing through the floor. Griff dropped the beer bottle he'd been clutching. Bree screamed. JD just stood there, frozen solid. The figure by the shed started moving toward us. Slow, jerky steps, like a puppet being yanked on crooked strings. I scrambled for the rifle. Found the shells. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped one on the floor and couldn't find it again. I shoved the others into the chamber. And then it spoke. In my voice, it called my name, not like a question, like a command. Then it laughed. This broken, high-pitched giggle. And it started repeating things. Things I'd said earlier that day. Stupid phrases. Old inside jokes I hadn't said in years. Every word exact. Same rhythm, same tone. Like it had been listening. Griff lost it, threw the door open and fired. The echo rolled down the hill like thunder. Silence followed. No scream, no blood, just fog slowly curling over the porch, like nothing had ever been there. We didn't sleep, we didn't talk, we just sat in a tight circle, backs to the wall. Bree whispered what I think were prayers. Marcos didn't let go of the fireplace poker for hours. JD kept muttering, "Not real, It's not real. It's not real. Sometime after 3, the smell hit us. Rotten meat, sweet and wet. It soaked into everything, our clothes, our hair, the air in our lungs. JD ran to the sink and threw up. The rest of us gagged or covered our faces with our sleeves. And just like the scream, it vanished. That was it. We weren't waiting for sunrise. We packed up whatever we could grab in 2 minutes. Bree had the keys, Griff drove. We didn't even look back. Halfway down the mountain, still fog everywhere, my phone buzzed. No signal. One voicemail from my number. I shouldn't have played it. The first thing I heard was breathing. Wet. Labored. Like someone struggling to stay upright. Then my voice, relentlessly eyeballing. Let me in. The same scream followed. And in the background, barely audible, I swear, I heard the cabin door creak open. We never went back. None of us talked about it for months. Bree cut ties with the guy who owned the cabin. JD changed schools. I still hear from Hannah and Griff sometimes, but we don't mention Black Hollow, not anymore. I was 17 the last time I hiked the ridge trail above Mingo Hollow, and I haven't gone back since. Not even close. My Uncle Hank has this old cabin tucked into the Appalachian woods, South Kentucky, somewhere out near Stokes Hill. The place is about 6 miles down a gravel road that's so narrow if you pass another car, someone's backing up. Every summer, my cousins and I would stay there for a few weeks. No cell signal, no internet, no cable. Just a cabin, a busted generator, the woods, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I was always excited for it. Weird maybe, but I liked how disconnected everything felt out there. Jeremy and Lacey, my cousins, made it fun. Jeremy was a year older and always full of wild ideas. He'd come up with dumb dares like climbing the chimney or sleeping outside in a tent made from a tarp and some fishing line. Lacey was his younger sister, sarcastic and quick with a comeback. She pretended to hate it all, but you could tell she liked being part of something. Me? I was just glad to be out there. I didn't need to be the leader. I just liked the way the air smelled like pine needles and wet stone. Simple. Behind the cabin, there was this overgrown field filled with thorn bushes and these tall, spiky plants my uncle called devil's walking sticks. At the edge was a sagging barbed wire fence. Duck under that fence, follow a narrow deer path, and you'd hit a clearing we always called the hunter's camp. We didn't name it that because we saw any hunters. We never saw anyone out there. It just looked like someone had tried to make it livable once. Some old lawn chairs, a broken down lean-to made from logs, a few coolers with faded stickers, and this weird fire pit ringed with cracked stones. There were bones there too, deer mostly. But sometimes they were piled, sometimes spread out, and sometimes they moved. We never talked about that part too much, not seriously anyway. It was just one of those unspoken rules. Don't stay too long, and don't go alone. That summer we were older, too cool to be scared, or at least pretending to be. Jeremy had this idea to map out the dry creek bed that ran behind the cabin. Said he wanted to see where it ended. He had this mental map of the woods he'd been building over the years, like a puzzle he was trying to solve. I think he wanted to find something nobody else had, or maybe just prove the place wasn't as boring as it seemed. So he packed some water, a flashlight, and his dying phone, then pushed through the brush. There was no real path, just instinct, and the usual, I think it's this way, confidence that Jeremy always carried. We passed the fence, but didn't go through it. Instead, we followed the dry creek bed, thinking it would curve around and take us to the top of the ridge. Maybe we'd get a good look at the hunter's camp from above, but somewhere along the way, things stopped lining up. The woods looked the same, but wrong. A tree we'd seen before was suddenly on the opposite side. A big rock with a split down the middle looked like it had shifted angles. I remember thinking, maybe we just looped without realizing it. Then we hit the clearing, and we were at the camp. But we hadn't come in from the usual direction. We were behind it. The fire pit was in front of us. The lean-to was facing away. There shouldn't have been a way in from that side. It didn't feel right. Not scary at first, just off. Like we'd walked into a copy of a familiar place. Something was rearranged. Not obvious, but enough to make your skin prickle. Jeremy dropped into one of the chairs and stretched out like nothing was wrong. Lacey wandered toward the lean-to, sniffed the air, and made a face. "This place stinks," she said, like something crawled in and died. She wasn't being dramatic. The smell was heavy, rotten, like mold, meat, and something else I still can't describe. I remember holding my breath without even realizing it. I told them we should head back, but Jeremy ignored me and ducked inside the shelter. "Just a sec, something's in here." Lacey turned to leave, not staying for this. Jeremy came crawling out a moment later, holding his phone like it was a trophy. "Dead thing," he said. "Big." He handed me the phone. The photo was blurry, but you could make out the fur, the shape of the body. Too big for a raccoon. Too wrong for a dog. Its ribs were split open like something had pulled them apart from the middle. There were scratches on the back wall above it, long and deep, as if the thing had been trying to climb the logs before it died. I gave the phone back without a word. Jeremy looked unsure for the first time. We agreed to leave. Jeremy wanted to take the ridge trail instead of cutting back through the brush, said it'd be faster. I didn't argue, I just wanted out. As we started climbing, I noticed how quiet it had gotten. Not the usual forest quiet either, just nothing. No birds, no wind, no bugs. Even our footsteps sounded too loud. Jeremy stopped halfway up and held out a hand. "Wait, did you hear that?" We froze. It came again. A soft crack, like a branch underfoot. Behind us, not close, not far, like something pacing us just out of sight. "Probably a deer," he muttered, but his voice cracked. We kept moving, quicker now. Lacey stumbled on a root and nearly fell. "I hate this trail," she snapped. "I hate this whole friggin' trip." Then Jeremy spun around. "Did you see that?" I turned, and there it was, standing between two trees, just at the edge of the clearing. It didn't move. Just stood there, watching. Its shape was wrong. It was tall, way taller than any person should have been. Its limbs were long, too long, and its arms hung past its knees. It was completely black. Not dark, not shadowed. Black like it sucked light in. No detail, just a void. And it leaned forward slightly, like it had just realized we were there. Lacey screamed. Jeremy dropped the phone. That broke the spell. I grabbed her and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Branches tore at my arms. Something thumped behind us, slow, steady, like it wasn't running but knew it didn't have to. I swear I heard a sound, too. Not breathing exactly. More like dry leaves rustling across concrete. We broke through the trees and hit the gravel road. The sun was low, the porch light on. We didn't stop until we were inside the cabin with the door locked and bolted. Nobody talked. Jeremy found his phone the next day. The photo was ruined. Just gray blur and tree trunks, nothing useful. Lacey left early. Her mom came and got her 2 days ahead of schedule. Jeremy didn't say a word for the rest of the trip, not to me, not to Uncle Hank, not even to her. I still think about it sometimes. What we saw, what we did. I don't go past that fence anymore. I was 19 when this happened, too old to be acting like I had things figured out, too young to know that I really didn't. I just dropped out of college. No dramatic reason, no big event. I didn't flunk out or get kicked out. I just stopped showing up. At first, I told myself I needed a break, that it was temporary. But a few missed classes turned into weeks, and then it was just easier not to open my laptop at all. I ignored texts, calls, emails. My parents kept checking in, asking if I was okay. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Eventually, I stopped answering altogether. My uncle caught wind of what was going on. He didn't try to fix it or give me a speech. He just said a friend of his had a cabin up in the mountains on the West Virginia side Appalachian range, remote enough to lose yourself in. The guy only used it for hunting in the fall. The rest of the year it sat empty. My uncle said I could go there for a while, clear my head, be alone. No rent, just keep the place from falling apart. It sounded like exactly what I needed. So I packed a duffel bag with clothes, a sleeping bag, a few paper bags, some canned food, and a hatchet I'd only ever used on firewood at summer camp. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, just filled up my tank and drove out of the city. The drive was long and weirdly quiet. Once I hit the foothills, cell service dropped to nothing. Towns got smaller and sadder the deeper I went. One had a gas station with a single pump and a payphone duct taped to the wall. The last place I passed before turning off onto the trail to the cabin had a church, a diner with a sagging porch, and a general store that looked abandoned. Outside of that store, nailed to a tree, was a wooden sign with big hand-painted letters. "Slow down. The trees. Remember." I took a picture of it, thought it was funny. I don't think that anymore. The cabin sat halfway up a ridge. The trail that led to it was barely wide enough for my car, and I had to park about 50 feet from the front steps because of a fallen log. No neighbors, no real road, just trees. Tall ones, packed tight together like they were huddling around the place. Inside, the cabin was rough but solid. Log walls, wood-burning fireplace, metal roof. There was a cot, a battered table, a few shelves lined with dusty paperbacks and expired food. Everything smelled like damp wood and stone. There was no electricity, but there was a hand pump sink. And the outhouse was a short walk away. Not glamorous, but it worked. And for the first week, it really did feel like I was healing. I got into a rhythm, wake up with the sun, hike for a few hours, eat something, read, chop wood, sleep. I stopped checking my phone, even when I had a signal, which wasn't often. I started feeling like maybe this whole dropout thing wasn't the end of the world. Then the noises started. It was a little past midnight the first time I heard it. I was half asleep in my sleeping bag when a sound pulled me up fast, like a whisper, but distant. Strange, stuttering. At first I thought I'd left a window open, but they were all shut. I sat there in the dark, listening. It came again. Faint. Like a voice filtered through a fan. Garbled. Broken. I got up, walked to the window, looked out. Nothing, just trees, still and black. The next night I heard it again. Closer this time. A low murmur, not quite words, but not random noise either. Like someone trying to mimic speech without knowing what the words meant. I told myself it was an animal. Foxes scream, owls mimic, the forest makes weird sounds. I repeated those explanations to myself over and over. But that logic started to crack the morning I found the boot prints. They were behind the cabin, just past the woodshed. Small, narrow, pointed toes. Definitely not mine. They stopped maybe 10 feet from the door and didn't go anywhere else. No path leading in or out, just a dozen perfect prints in the dirt, as if someone had stood there, watching. I tried to play it down. Maybe they were old. Maybe some hiker got lost months ago. But there had been frost the night before, and these prints were clean, fresh. After that, I locked the door every night, moved the cot away from the window, stacked a chair under the doorknob. I started keeping the hatchet close. The voices came back every night now, like clockwork, always from the same direction, back behind the shed, deeper in the trees. I started losing track of how many nights I'd been there. Time stretched. I wasn't sleeping much. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that isolation was messing with my head. Then the 12th night came, and I decided to follow it. I waited until the sound started. Strapped on my headlamp, grabbed my flashlight and the hatchet, and walked out the back door. I followed the sound past the shed, into the trees. It was rhythmic now, almost like a chant, soft and steady. The forest was silent except for that. Even the bugs were gone. My boots crunched softly on the leaves, and the deeper I went, the heavier the air felt. I don't mean humid, I mean thick, like walking through water. The voice led me up the ridge to a part I hadn't explored. The trees there were strange, older, maybe. The trunks bent in weird ways. I stepped over a rotting log and froze. There was a clearing, and in it were things, not people, not animals. They were about waist high, their bodies thin and knotted like old roots. Their limbs were too long, joints in the wrong places, fingers like dry twigs. Their skin looked like wet bark, mossy, cracked, dark, and their eyes, pale, glowing, lidless, watching something in the center of the clearing, a deer. Alive, barely, breathing shallow, chest twitching. It wasn't tied down, but it didn't move. Not when one of them reached out and touched it. Not when the others circled closer. They were humming now, that same low, droning hum. It pressed against me like static in my bones. Not just a sound, pressure. My teeth ached, my vision pulsed. Then I must have stepped wrong. A twig snapped under my boot. Every single head turned. Every eye locked onto me. I didn't think. I ran. I don't remember much of the path back. Just the panic. The trees closing in. Branches cutting my face and arms. I lost the flashlight. The headlamp flickered. I just kept moving, feet slipping, chest burning, because I knew they were behind me. I hit the cabin, slammed the door, shoved the chair under the knob, piled everything I could against it. The humming didn't follow, but I stood there, shaking, hatchet in hand, watching that door until morning light started to creep in. I left that morning. Didn't eat. Didn't clean up. Just threw my stuff in the car and drove. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station with real people inside. I didn't tell them anything. Just filled the tank and kept driving. I never went back. I don't think I even told my uncle I'd left. I'm 34, and last October I decided to disappear for a while. Not in a dramatic way, no crisis, no breakdown. I just needed to step off the map. No emails, no news alerts, no calls. I told people I was going up to the Appalachians to finally finish a novel I'd been dragging behind me for years. That sounded productive. Truth was, I just wanted somewhere that didn't expect anything from me. I found the cabin through a guy I met in an online writing group. Said it belonged to his uncle, who went off the grid and never came back. That should have been a red flag. But he laughed when he said it, so I figured it was a joke. He warned me it was pretty bare bones, real isolated. He said, closest town was a speck on the map called Elk Ridge, 20 miles out. No Wi-Fi, no Starbucks. The cabin itself was primitive. Just one big room, a tiny loft above, an old stove that smoked too much, and a rickety table shoved under a small window with no curtain. The only lock was this flimsy wooden latch that probably wouldn't hold if you leaned on the door too hard. I didn't mind. I wasn't planning on seeing anyone. For the first couple of days, things were quiet. I cooked simple stuff, made notes in my journal, walked a bit around the edge of the woods. I managed to write one line in the notebook. The woods were not quite empty. I sat with that sentence for hours. I think I was trying to sound mysterious, but mostly I was just stuck. It got dark early, the kind of dark where you can't see your hand unless you're right on top of the fire. I tried not to let it get to me, but I started leaving the flashlight beside my bed just in case. Third night, I woke up to this sound. It was slow, soft, and deliberate, like someone was dragging a stick across the wooden floor. Just one long scrape. I figured maybe an animal had gotten in, a raccoon or something. But then I realized it sounded like it was already inside the cabin. That got me up real fast. I swept the room with my flashlight, checked under the table, around the stove, nothing. No sign anything had come in. No knocked over pot, no scratches, just quiet. The fire had died out. I was freezing. I stepped outside to clear my head and immediately noticed something was off. The grass around the cabin had a layer of frost, and in that frost were footprints, dozens of them, bare feet, human. They circled the cabin twice, perfect loops, and then disappeared into the woods. I followed the trail maybe 20 feet. Then they just stopped, like someone had vanished mid-step. No melt, no smudging, just a clean end. I didn't sleep after that. Just sat there until the sun came up, trying to come up with any logical explanation. Maybe the guy who rented me the place was screwing with me. Maybe it was some weird frost pattern. Anything. But I couldn't make it make sense. Next day, I tried to keep busy. Went out to gather firewood, tried to shake it off. I left my boots by the door that night like usual. When I went to put them on the next afternoon, they were gone. I found them sitting on the roof, not kicked up there, not tossed, placed. One beside the other, neat as a photo. There's no ladder at the cabin. I had to stack some logs and climb like an idiot to get them down. I didn't laugh. I didn't even get mad. I just felt watched. That night I drank 2 glasses of whiskey by the fire. It helped, until I woke up again around 2 in the morning. No noise this time. Just a feeling, like something was breathing on me. I didn't want to move, but I had to. I flipped on the flashlight. Nothing. But the air felt hot, like breath, and damp. I stayed in bed, not blinking, not moving, just listening. Then it started, croaking, deep, wet, rhythmic. Not a frog. Something trying to sound like one, but getting it wrong, too loud, too human, like a voice coming through a broken speaker. It moved slowly around the cabin, outside at first, stopped at the door, then the window, then it faded into the trees. I didn't sleep again. At sunrise, I started packing. I didn't care about the novel, the money, or the time I'd planned to stay. I wanted out. But when I opened the door, the path was blocked. The trail I'd driven up was gone, buried under branches. Not fallen branches, these were arranged, interlaced, like a fence made by hand. I tried to drive through it, but the tires just spun. The road had turned to mud overnight. There was no way out. That night, the croaking came back, but this time, it didn't stay outside. There was no creak of the door, no sound at all. Just silence, then breathing, right beside me. I didn't turn the light on. I didn't move. I just lay there, frozen, trying not to breathe too loud. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. I stayed that way until dawn started bleeding through the window. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps, not aggressive, just patient. I waited. It came again. Louder, then again, louder still. Eventually, I got up and peeked outside. Nobody there, but someone had written something on the window. The condensation from my breath made it clear. You woke it. I lost it. Just bolted out the door, barefoot. Ran straight into the woods. No gear, no flashlight, just panic. I didn't stop until I hit the road. By some miracle, a logging truck passed not long after. I flagged it down, climbed in without a word. The driver didn't ask questions, just handed me a thermos and kept driving. I've never been back. I never even told the guy who rented me the place. I didn't want to hear him say, "Yeah, I've seen that before."